morning trading session and start to another work week. Here we go. Just a second as I get my screen sharing going. So it appears as though the NASDAQ opened with a big gap lower this morning. You can see it most clearly here on the Eagle. This is where the market left off last week, around the 48.55 mark, and a fairly steady progression lower this morning. So we've got a rather substantial opening gap just above here. I'm going to do my best not to rush into anything. And we'll try to give the market a minute or two here to get its bearings. Crude oil, fairly neutral. Here's crude oil on the Hawk Scalper. And the overnight, a little bit of a rally, but since this morning's open, the North American Open, really all we've had to do was a macro pullback signal that came just prior to the stock market opening. We are getting a first micro-macro cross here. I've got my hoping and praying it turns into yellow bars so I don't have to worry about taking it. Come on, get up there a little bit. The reason I'm not keen on taking it is because it's still very early and because this market is moving kind of sideways. Well, what I can do is I can dial down the risk amount. That's probably prudent. I could also do a second push on the entry. Oops, look at that, at 1% it won't allow me to do it. Well, it is okay to pass on a trade if it doesn't meet your risk parameters. So we'll just see where we are here on our support and resistance lines. You can see we fell off from the primary support, landed right here on this secondary zone. 1, 2, 3 zones down. That's pretty bearish, all right. Don't know if the buyers will be able to manage a full-on rally in spite of that big gap. Whenever you see a market make a strong move and seems to be establishing a trend, there's that first micro-macro cross signal. Sometimes the only thing that the opposing traders will be able to do is throw it into a sideways range. Okay, that's since moved too far for a second push entry. The Falcon looking a little bit more palatable. Well, it just kind of bolted on me a little bit there. The thing I was going to say about the Falcon trade is that you could take it below this little swing low by offering up a couple extra ticks if you wanted and covering above the high. And we had a comparable signal on the Falcon and the Eagle, and I'm just going to punch into the Eagle trade here. So it's the same trade that we're looking at across the board. Essentially the market testing the bottom end of the trading range, hopefully resuming the downtrend. Looks as though we have a bearish trend line, something to that effect. I guess we had a sell signal right here on the opening bell as well, didn't we? Now you've probably noticed that with these controls up here, you can get into a market quickly if you don't have time to set your prices like we normally do. You will not have a profit target, however, unless you're using the Trailblazer. Of course, with the Trailblazer, you can preset your profit objectives. Come on. Well, just looking for a little follow through. So far, the seller's pressing hard, but we need to anticipate the buyers coming in here somewhere. let's put that up on the shelf for now. The eagle is the only one of our tools we would not have hit our profit target yet. Hopefully we're not going to see too much of a reaction here. All right, here we go. They're getting a little bit more active again. The bears. We had a macro pullback here. Well, here come the buyers again. So it's looking like these lows around just under 48.12, so 48.11 3/4. We've hit that a couple times now. That whole 48.12 zone. All right, this may well be where the buyers are going to dig in. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with a slightly more aggressive stop. Not quite break even, but essentially if we break out of these highs, I think I'm going to take a stop out. Come on. Ah, thanks, Tony. Tony says, top of the hour, we've got the new home sales report. And yes, that could spark the market a little bit. I think we may see the market kind of in limbo today as well. Maybe not as bad as what we have been, but of course, big presidential debate on TV tonight. Yeah, it's been a while. Tony says last time we were trading at these levels was back about a week ago on the 21st, so that would make it last Tuesday. Daniel asked, Eric, outside of these classes, do you only trade the NASDAQ? No, but the NASDAQ is one of my favorites. When I'm day trading, I tend to focus mostly on the NASDAQ. End of day trades, I look at some of the currencies. I look at the grain markets. Very rarely will I take a meat trade like feeder cattle or live cattle. I don't trade hogs anymore. Occasionally, I'll look at a sugar or cocoa trade, but cocoa is a very wild market. Well, all right, so they did tap me on that little bit of a reset, but that's okay. Like I said, it was close enough to be break even. My concern is that the market's making multiple hits here on the lows and not heading any lower. That's usually the time we see the buyers show up and try to push the market higher from there. All right, so we're just kind of on hold now. Well, we've got a green bar sell. I'm not. Well, the thing with the green bar sell, of course, is we don't need to sell it. We've got the warning dot. We could set up for the failure. We could set up for the green bar sell to actually rally. Now, again, this is a little bit risky still. The market seems to be more sideways than anything. If you're going to try this type of trade, maybe just go in with a single. There we go. There's the green bar sell signal. So here come the sellers trying to regain the market. We'll see now if it fails and whether or not we're going to get a rally out of this. They're thinking about it. right, so it looks like that green bar sell, if it's not hitting its profit objective, would be very close. And we'll see now whether or not we're going to get a failure. And a possible rally. So it seems like they're trying to dig in a little bit there. The buyers, I mean. And that tends to happen as well after the market hits its profit objective, right? Sometimes we get those quick reversals. No, maybe not. All right, we'll cancel that order. If the buyers do come back here, we're likely to get a first micro macro cross, or we can always look at buying above there as well. All right, another first micro macro cross lower. Ay, ay, ay. You know, we've got this market just moving sideways here. I like the fact that we have an opportunity at a second push entry on this one. The second push entry simply means that we allow the signal to engage, and then you allow the market to retreat from that to show you there's some active buying going on here. The point of that is, if the buyers lose their grip and the sellers push back down through this low, then we should see some more downward momentum. Thankfully, we've moved into yellow bars. So I don't need to worry about that. Okay, so here we come again. Now, there's a couple ways you can handle this. You can look at the red bar, or pardon me, shoot. wrong button, 1 second here. We can look at buying the green bar failure as we were doing, or you can look for a first micro macro cross higher. Daniel's asking, do you always trade with DTS? For my day trading, I do. DTS, not an end-of-day system, of course. So when I'm looking at my end-of-day trades, it's really just price action, trying to determine where the support is, where the resistance is, where the buyers are, where the sellers are. Okay, I think we're going to see a little bit of a rally here. What are the other tools doing? Oh, we could get a soft edge buy signal here in the Raptor. So for you Raptor owners, many of you may have considered this a soft edge buy already, and I would have been okay with that. So here we've got another one. The signal just engaged. The soft edge buy always occurs just after a test of the extreme. So in this case, the extreme is the low, or the matching lows. The market rallies up. In this case, we actually took out this little itty bitty swing high, which is nice. Then they came down, did not manage to resume the downtrend, and came back with another buy signal. So there's our soft edge buy. Our target is actually the hard edge of the trading band. And I'll get a stop in play here. Don't know if we're going to see a full-on reversal, but it does seem as though the market is, the buyers are going to try to test the top end, see how far they can get. So we've hit our break-even target. Come on. Oh, don't stop now. Come on. I need just a couple more ticks. All right, here they go. There we go. All right, so we've hit our first profit target here on the Raptor, and we're about to hit the hard edge where, of course, we can anticipate a little bit of a reaction. Let me preview what the parabolics are like. Yeah, maybe we'll go with parabolic. Sure, why not? All right, let's see what goes on now when we get into this hard edge. All right, so it looks like the buyer's putting in a little bit of a rally and quickly approaching the top end of the the trading gap. So this is where the market topped out this morning. Oh, here's a little bit of a reaction now, of course, as the market encounters the hard edge. We might get lucky here and see a little bit of a swing. We had a nice first micro macro cross signal here in the hawk as well. Way to go, Tony. Tony says he took the trend change signal in the Falcon. Picked up 56, nicely done. So a little bit of an early, what we would refer to as an early trend change signal, but the structure is still the same. Namely, we've got the higher low, we've got the rejection of the lows, and the subsequent follow through. So very well done. Well, everything's gone quiet again. Come on. It's hard to say whether they're going to give us a reaction here or not, if this is just a short-term stall. A breakout above these highs pardon me, a breakout above this recent high should see the market continue higher. Come on. Yes, it did too. Tony says that rally coincided with the home sales report. Right you are. All right. Well, that was not a bad little rally, so we've picked up a couple good trades in spite of a little bit of a sluggish market this morning. Well, I was hoping things would be a little bit more active today, but maybe not. Still, just dragging along from what we've seen the last couple of weeks. Waiting on a macro pullback here. Might be getting a cloud crossover in the Raptor. Cloud crossover, of course, occurs when the clouds cross over. We expect the market to retreat into the cloud and then for the cloud to support the market and push it out again. Also getting a green bar sell here off the hard edge, which is what we might expect. All right, so there's that macro pullback. Almost looking like a conflicted market here. And by that I mean we're getting some changeover in signals. The trade forecaster suggesting we're moving out of scalp mode into trend mode in about a minute's time. We'll see how long the trade forecaster expects that to last. That's a good point. Salisha is asking, there's a lot of trade systems out there geared toward the E-mini, the ES, and he's asking, does anybody trade the E-mini with DTS? I'm going to put the E-mini on here on my alternate chart so that you can see. The only reason I don't trade the E-mini, and I'll show you here because it's going to be easier to show you an example. Let's take a look at okay, here's the E-mini on the Hawk. So a lot of people think the E-mini leads the market. It does not. It actually tends to follow the NASDAQ and the mini Dow. In fact, the late Marsh Jones used to have a interesting trading philosophy where he would watch the time and sales on the NASDAQ and the Dow. He didn't even watch a chart. He was watching the time and sales. And when he saw a spike in the buying or selling that coincided between the NASDAQ and the Dow, he would put a corresponding order in on the E-mini. So in other words, if he saw a spike in buying the NASDAQ and the Dow, both occurring at the same time, he would hit the buy market button on the E-mini because he knew the E-mini would follow that rally, that the rally in the NASDAQ and the Dow actually preceded the rally in the E-mini. The E-mini is a great instrument. It's obviously one of the world's most popular markets. To me, its downside is the tick value. Here was that we took this short, or we're looking at taking the short in the NASDAQ out of this morning's session. So let's say we chose to enter here. Normally, I would cover above the high. And just for argument's sake, let's say let's take it to the low because the low will be the easiest to measure. Okay, so to put on this trade in the E-mini, it would be well within my risk parameters. I would be able to trade one contract and it would yield about $175 in profit. Let's take a look at that corresponding trade now in the NASDAQ. So that signal occurred right out of the open. So it's this signal right here. So we're going to take a look at shorting this sell signal. We're going to cover above the high. Oops, sorry, we're going to compare apples to apples here the best that we can. So we're going to cover above the high and we're going to take it down to the low. All right, so in this case, well, it matches pretty well. Very often what will happen because of the tick size in the E-mini is that I'll actually be able to take two contracts in the NASDAQ versus a single contract in the E-mini. Because, of course, the NASDAQ is only $5 a tick versus the $12.50 a tick in the E-mini. In this case, you can see that the dollar amount is pretty much equivalent. A little bit more profit potential in the NQ, $200 versus $175, but for all intents and purposes, they're equal. So that's what a lot of people don't realize when they trade the E-mini. They think, oh, the higher tick value means I will make more profit, because they assume, well, if the E-mini moves 10 ticks, then the NASDAQ must move 10 ticks. But no, that's not the case. They tend to move equivalent dollar amounts. So even though the E-mini may move 10 ticks, the NASDAQ may move 15. And you can see that just by this example. Exact same signal. The E-mini and the NASDAQ both moved roughly $200. So if I were able to structure this trade, let's say the trade parameters were just slightly different so that I could get in here. Let's see, I'll cover it really, really tight. Can I get two trades out of that? No. But you get my point. There's going to be occasions where, I cover the trade like this, and I'm going to get two contracts, or sometimes maybe even three contracts, whereas I will still only be able to get one contract with the E-mini. So the potential to earn is greater, I think, with a lower tick value market. The E-mini, of course, and the NASDAQ are going to move very similar. If anything, I think the NASDAQ has a little bit more volatility to it. So here's the NASDAQ. We're producing a macro pullback signal. Let's see what's going on here now in the S&P, and we're printing yellow bars. If you do choose to trade the E-mini, you should go to the alternate settings, which would be a 4-tick hawk, a 4-tick falcon, and a 6-tick eagle. So I think the reason a lot of these other trading systems focus on the E-mini is just because of its popularity. It's basic marketing, I suppose. Marketing, give people what they're asking for. Right? So if you got a whole lot of E-mini traders out there, it only makes sense to make your system focus on the E-mini. And I haven't really been criticized for following the NASDAQ or the mini Dow, but people always ask. And I'm glad they do, because I think, as I pointed out, I don't think a lot of people actually take the time to compare the two and look at the possible benefits that may be had from trading a market like the NASDAQ. All right, a possible late filter entry signal here on the Falcon. So the late filter entry signal occurs when the filter goes out of sync. It has to come back into sync, but the whole time this trend line will not change color. I can tell you that if this bar finishes here on the high, the filter will come back into sync, so you can actually anticipate that signal. Can I cover it down there? Ooh, I can. So here's a late filter entry signal. We're essentially looking for one more push higher, looking to see if the buyers really do have control of this marketplace or whether or not the sellers are going to knock it down off of these highs. So it's hardly, well, it's a high probability signal, but the trade itself, I would probably say, is one of these 50-50 trades. There's a lot of selling going to occur up here, which is why I'm trying to keep my stop as deep as I am. All right, there we go. We got the fill. Let's see if we get the follow through. Interesting observation. Tony says, in my opinion, the E-mini, the ES, has a lot of scalpers that are happy with 3 or 4 ticks with multi-contracts. Yes, I would agree with that. A $50 scalp target is pretty much universal, which would be a 4-tick grab in the E-mini. All right, so here we are now, fighting the high. Let's see if the buyers can get through there. Come on, buyers. Remember, I said if we break out above this high, we should see some follow through. There we go. So we've hit our break even. Come on. Come on. You stinkers. Get up there. Look at that. They're going to let me hang for a single tick. Get up there. Don't make me take the mouse out. So we're going to need a little bit of luck to ride out this swing. Notice that had we taken the signal on the hash mark, which really wasn't an option because the filter was out of sync, but how often the market reacts after hitting the high probability profit target. All right, well, nice follow through on the macro pullback signal. Ooh, and we did get that cloud crossover signal here in the Raptor. So if you were running multiples here on the Raptor, hopefully you got profit on one of your targets and probably got a break-even stop out on the other one. Okay, working a second macro pullback signal. That tends to be a little bit bearish, actually. We don't like to see too many macro pullbacks within a trend. Oh, Jim shot me some advanced decline numbers here. We got just under 1,000 on the buy and 1,800 on the sell, so that's kind of bearish. Again, some of that may still be leftover from that huge opening morning gap. All right, we got a fairly conflicted market again. Working a green bar sell here on the Eagle. Hard edge bounces on the Raptor. Possible macro pullback here on the Hawk. And a possible trend change working here on the Falcon. Now, the nice thing about the Eagle signal is that we do have an opportunity for a second push on this one. It is, if the market is developing a trading range, we are at the top end of the trading range, which is where we would like to sell, right? If it's in a trading range, we don't want to sell the bottom end. Ideally, we want to sell the top end. All right, here they come. Very neutral again. All right, well, we're just going to leave that for the moment. If you excuse me, I will be right back. Okay, I'm back. And it looks like we got filled on our green bar sell signal. And the seller's back down here around this little area of support. I may choose to go with something a little bit more aggressive stop-wise. Yeah, sure, let's do the bar high-low. That should keep things fairly close without risking too much. Oops. There we go. We'll stay with this trade for another 5 minutes, and then I'm going to have to button up the room a little bit early. I do have a meeting at the top of the hour, so we'll see whether or not we can't get the sellers to push a little harder here. Here's the similar trade now on the E-mini, and you can see how the E-mini just a little bit behind on what's going on in the NQ, also producing a green bar sell. So the signals are the same regardless of the market you're following. We're still looking for the same things. Come on down. You know you want to. All right, well, we're going to button up the room here in just a moment. I do anticipate that we should see the sellers give it one more push here. Obviously, if we can take out the current low, I'm fairly confident we'll at least see our break even. I may even choose to bring the stops in a little bit tighter. But I'm going to get ready for my meeting at the top of the hour, and I will see you guys again tomorrow. So I hope that you'll stop in then. And yeah, be careful. It's a little bit of a funny kind of day going on today. So we'll talk to you tomorrow morning. Bye for now.